This week on Total Recall Bollywood, we are rewinding to the golden era of Indian cinema, the 1950s. The decade's golden boy was clearly Raj Kapoor. Before he became the great showman, he was a romantic tramp who adored Charlie Chaplin and this lady, Nargis.
नहीं, देख रहा है। वो।
He was no good at studies, failed his metric exam, so Dad Prithviraj Kapoor sent him to assist his friend director Kedar Sharma. His job was to give the clap before each shot, a simple job which Raj made a hash of and prompted the exasperated director to slap him one day. Film journalist Lata Khubchandani recounts the story.
Every time Raj Kapoor was asked to give the clap, what he'd do was, he'd quickly go and look at himself in the mirror, and he had told the cameraman that, look, you first take a picture of me. He wanted to see how he was looking. One day what happened, they had to shoot something in the dusk and the sunlight was going away. He went and combed his hair and everything. Then he went so close to the hero that with the clap he took off his beard and the whole shot went off. And Kedar Sharma was so angry because that was a wasted day. He went and slapped him hard.
Kedar Sharma realized that Raj Kapoor had no interest in being behind the camera. So he cast him as the hero in his next film, Neel Kamal. And a star was born.
केवल तुम मेरे घर में रहकर अपने रास्ते खुद नहीं ढूंढ सकते। शुक्रिया पिताजी।
But young Raj wasn't satisfied with being a mere actor. He wanted control over every aspect of filmmaking. So the next year, at the age of 24, he launched his own banner, RK Films, and directed Aag, a brooding, dark love story that also marked the emergence of Nargis as his leading lady and muse. A still from his next directorial venture, Barsat, of him holding Nargis, became the immortal logo of RK Films. Immortal, pretty much what his next film made him.
आवारा हूँ, या गर्दिश में हूँ, आसमान का तारा हूँ, आवारा हूँ.
The film and its music became an international rage. In Russia particularly, Raj Kapoor became an icon.
सुनसान नगर अनजान डगर का प्यारा हूँ, आवारा हूँ.
You'd be surprised that when I was in Moscow, to be Raj Kapoor's brother was the greatest asset you could carry with you. You were the king of Moscow if you were Raj Kapoor's any relative.
Raj Kapoor was clearly inspired by Chaplin during this period of his career. The tramp of Avara reappears in Shri 420, the story of a simple man's seduction by the seamier side of city life. The film was a hit. The songs were on everyone's lips. And the image of Nargis and RK sharing an umbrella, or these three kids, who actually were Raj's own children, remain forever etched in memory.
If you look at the Raj Kapoor films carefully of the 50s, they have a lot of social meaning. They are about the common man, almost socialistic, and many of the songs and stories of that period of Raj Kapoor are involved with issues of poverty, of birth, being highborn and lowborn. They're very melodramatic films.
पानी गहरा है, डूब जाओगे.
हम तो डूबेंगे सनम, तुमको भी लेट डूबेंगे.
Part of the reason for the success of Raj Kapoor's early films was the palpable on-screen chemistry with Nargis. Their love is legendary. From 1951 till 1956, Nargis worked almost exclusively with Raj Kapoor.
She molded herself into everything that he liked. He liked women to wear white. He liked mogras. She'd dress in white, she'd wear mogras. She did everything that he wanted. Now, she was not a whimpering little miss. She was very modern. She knew her mind. She was an assertive woman. But even then, she molded herself to please him. They were madly in love, and you could see this in their films.
But Raj was a married man, and their love was not to be. Nargis finally broke away from him in 1956.
इस झूठी शान और चमक दमक के लिए तुम अपना सब कुछ खो बैठे तो जाओ उसी राजमहल होटल में जहां तुमने अपनी इंसानियत बेची है और वहीं से अपनी पसंद की मोहब्बत भी खरीद ली.
Jaagte Raho was the last film they ever did together. Once out of the Raj Kapoor camp, she was approached by director Mehboob Khan to play the role of her life. At the age of 28 years, Nargis became Mother India. To know more about that, come back after the break. Picture this, a fire sequence is being shot. The fire gets out of hand, with the heroine trapped inside. The gallant hero jumps in and rescues the lady. He suffers burns, but manages to win the lady's heart. And even though in the film they play mother and son, in real life, they fall in love and the next year they are married. It's fitting that the classic real-life love story of Nargis and Sunil Dutt should forever be associated with Mother India. One of the greatest epics to emerge out of Bombay cinema. Nargis was all of 28 years when she played this epitome of motherhood, a woman who braves economic and sexual exploitation to bring up her sons, and then goes on to kill one of them to maintain the honor of the community. While Mother India was Radha's story, her troubles reflected the extent of rural poverty and exploitation. Filmmakers in the 50s had increasingly started making movies about problems that the newly independent country was facing.
There was a general kind of cultural ferment, a cultural awakening, I would even say. India was going through a basic transformation of a nation state. Its economy was being changed in society, and all this got reflected in a very fertile period of filmmaking in Bombay.
International film festivals held for the first time in Bombay in the early 1950s made Indian filmmakers aware of Italian neo-realist films like De Sica's Bicycle Thief and Rossellini's Open City. The influence is best seen in Bimal Roy's Do Bigha Zameen. Shot on a tight budget in actual locations, the film tells the story of Shambhu, who must repay a loan or he loses his 2 acres of land.
अगर 2.5 महीने में 235 रुपए नहीं कमा सका तो मेरी जमीन जायदाद सब हाथ से निकल जाएगी.
So he goes to Calcutta to make some money as a rickshaw puller. Shambhu was brilliantly played by Balraj Sahani, and this scene of him racing against another rickshaw is one of the greatest moments in world cinema.
जल्दी चला. हाँ चल चल 4 रुपए दूंगा. 4 रुपए बाबू. 5 रुपए दूंगा. 6 रुपया. 6 रुपया. जल्दी चल. आउटलेट आउटलेट. हाँ बाबू. हाँ हाँ 4 रुपया देगा. जल्दी चलाओ.
Director Bimal Roy initially didn't want to take Balraj since he felt he looked too sophisticated, but the actor proved everyone wrong. Son Parikshit recalls his father's makeover.
I was in school when he did that bit of shooting, and my mother and my sister went with him to Calcutta. And I have heard that he arrived there a few days earlier than the unit, and he became friendly with the rickshaw-wallas, and he lived with them. He put on their clothes and he ate the food they ate, and I believe that he plied the rickshaw barefoot, even when the road was very, very hot. and he burnt himself, and I believe he also bled. But then that's what he was, you know, he was very honest about his work.
The story goes that Ashok Kumar desperately wanted to play Shambhu and was upset with Bimal Roy for casting Balraj instead. But that changed once he saw the film, says his daughter Bharti Jaffrey.
I remember one thing about it, that I think he said nobody else could have played the role, even if you tried. And he said Balraj Sahni was absolutely brilliant.
The film ends with Shambhu losing his land to the Zamindar, who builds a factory on it. B.R. Chopra's 1957 film Naya Daur had a happier ending. In a remote village, an industrialist's son introduces a bus service which threatens the livelihood of Tangawalas like Shankar.
हमारा तांगा रहने से आपका कोई नुकसान नहीं है, लेकिन आपकी लारी रहने से हम सबका नुकसान है.
The industrialist will only withdraw the bus if Shankar accepts his challenge to race against the bus and wins.
फैसला हो जाए. क्यों शंकर? हो जाए. हो जाए बाबू.
Egged by the whole village, Shankar achieves the impossible.
See, Naya Daur is a film which is very close to all of us. We feel that's one of Dad's best films. The idea that we talked about man versus machine. The fact that machine is important, but cannot make man redundant. I think that will be there every generation.
Well, time for a short break. When we return, Kishore Kumar and his brothers make a song and dance about a car. In the 50s, if Raj Kapoor was the romantic tramp, Devanand was the boy next door. The city was Dev's oyster, and he could play a suave gentleman or a gambler living in the urban underbelly with equal panache. But what he played best was the lover boy.
तबीयत में रंगीनी तो किसी की सुंदरता देख के आई जाती है.
This is a romantic medium. If you are not romantic in your mind, you have no business to be in this business. As simple as that.
Another kind of lover was Dilip Kumar, the losing kind.
कौन कमबख्त है जो बर्दाश्त करने के लिए पीता है?
The quintessential Devdas, he played the doomed lover in so many films in the 50s that it started affecting his personal life.
Dilip Kumar, when he was playing Devdas, it affected his mind so much that he had to go under psychiatric treatment. He used to give his all to every role. You probably don't know that after doing several serious roles in the 40s and 50s, he was advised by psychiatrists to turn to comedy.
So to lighten things up a bit, Dilip flirted with some frothy roles in films like Kohinoor and Azad.
ये दुनिया अगर मिल भी जाए तो क्या?
If the test of true love is pain, then Guru Dutt exemplified it in his 1957 film Pyasa, the story of a betrayed poet. The film marked the pinnacle of success for Dutt, whose cinematic journey began in the late 1940s when he was an assistant director at Prabhat Studios in Pune and friends with a young Devanand.
लंगोटिया यार कहते हैं हम, वैसे दोस्त थे हम, and we struck a deal and over a glass of beer, and he said, Dave, if ever I become a director, you're my star. As if I ever form a company and I invite a director to direct a film, you're going to be the one.
So when Devanand started his production house Navketan, he called Guru Dutt to direct Bazi, a film which in 1951 set the trend for a spate of urban crime films. Dutt also met his future wife, singer Geeta Roy, during a song recording for the film. In the next few years, Dutt turned producer and actor. He also successfully experimented with a light-hearted romantic entertainer called Mr. and Mrs. 55.
आप रो रही हैं?
नहीं तो मैं रो कहाँ रही हूँ? मुझे तो जोर का जुकाम हो रहा है।
Then came the dramatically somber Pyasa, a film where Sahil Ludhianvi's heartrending poetry was set to the haunting tunes of S.D. Burman. Guru Dutt was at his best, says his cousin, director Shyam Benegal.
He had a very wonderful sense, musical sense. He had, and his stories always had a lot of social content, apart from being very personal, because he had a very personal way of telling his stories, which was again somewhat unusual in the film industry, you know.
देखिए, मुझे बेतुका मजाक पसंद नहीं।
Guru Dutt loved using tight close-ups. He believed that 80% of acting is done by the eyes. He and his cinematographer V.K. Murthy also used dramatic lighting to create cinematic poetry. Best exemplified by this song from his next film, Kagas Ke Phool. The film captures the decline in fortunes of a famous film director. The director's doomed relationship with his protege was believed to be inspired by Dutt's real-life love affair with Wahida Rahman. The film bombed at the box office and left Dutt so shattered that he never claimed credit as a director again. Not even for his hit productions Chaudhwi Ka Chand and Sahib Biwi Aur Ghulam, which he is believed to have ghost-directed. Post Kagas Ke Phool, Guru Dutt's private life too took a downturn. His relationship with Wahida was over. His wife had left him, and on October 10, 1964, Guru Dutt was found dead in his bed. A lethal mix of alcohol and sleeping pills did him in. It may have been suicide or just an accidental overdose.
I do not know what happened. It was a very sudden death. And I'd met him 5-6 days earlier when he had invited me, come over, let's do a picture together. But at that moment also I realized and I saw that he was looking very frail, very feeble. When he found success, he was wonderful, on top of the world. And the moment failure hit him hard, he couldn't take it.
One man who owes his acting break to Guru Dutt was comedian Johnny Walker. Johnny, whose real name was Badruddin Jamaluddin Qazi, was a conductor with Bombay's local bus service and used to entertain his passengers with funny antics. Balrat Sahni got on his bus one day and was so impressed that he told the man to go and audition for Guru Dutt. Johnny's son, actor Nasir Qazi, recounts the episode.
He went into Navketan office as a drunk. You know, he slammed the door open and stumbled everywhere and walked into Guru Dutt's cabin and, you know, started harassing him to the point where they had him thrown out. You know, कि शराबी कौन है अंदर आ गया इसको बाहर निकालो. And then Balrat Sahni साहब came and said नहीं तो इसको actor बनना है and I told him, you know, to pretend to be like that.
So this real-life teetotaler made a hit debut as a drunk in Guru Dutt's Bazi. He changed his name to Johnny Walker, yes, after the famous liquor brand, and went on to make people smile in over 300 films. But Johnny was not the only famous character actor of the 50s. There was the comedian Tuntun.
Mummy, andar kaun hai?
Do lady.
The exotic seductress Helen. And there was the sophisticated villain K.N. Singh, who would scare you with his penetrating look and baritone voice.
जो कागजात आ रहे हैं उस पे हंसते हुए चुपचाप खामोश दस्तखत कर दो वरना ये बेचारा बहुत दूर चला जाएगा
जाने कहाँ मेरा जिगर गया जी मेरा जूता है जापानी.
The 50s was also Indian cinema's golden period because of its music.
It was also a period when you had some of the finest poets in the Urdu language writing lyrics for films. It was so inspiring also for music directors So you had some of the best music, you know, that we listen almost continuously, even though several generations have passed since then.
It was a period when Lata Mangeshkar reigned supreme. The only notable competition coming from Geeta Dutt's seductive voice.
Hello, mister, how do you do? Baba, Baba.
Three men ruled the male playback scene. The versatile Rafi was the pick of the pack. Mukesh for many years was best known as the voice of Raj Kapoor. And Kishore, well, this man began by imitating KL Sehgal, but soon created a style of his own.
He was phenomenal. The way he got his yodeling. I mean, it needed a lot of practice, but yet he never knew music as written music, as classical music. He never learned that.
Kishore Kumar was a pretty decent actor too. At a time when comedy was the domain of the hero's sidekick, he was the only comic hero.
Babu, samjho ishare, auran pukhare.
In 1958, he and his brothers Ashok and Anup teamed up to do a zany comedy. The story, like the 1928 Chevrolet in Chalti Ka Naam Gaadi, ran amok, accommodating songs and crazy situations.
Starting from the car which belonged to my grandfather. And Papa used to do boxing, and so he said, Kishore, let me put this boxing thing. And so he boxed somebody. They always had this something rhythmic going on between the three of them, even in real life, while they were talking, you know. So it was like the chemistry was so great.
Chalti Ka Naam Gaadi, which was India's first comic hit, had scenes which were inspired by the lives of its actors.
5 rupaiya 12 ana.
5 Rupaiya 12 Ana was actually what Kishore owed his former college in Indore. The assistant was named after the family's domestic helper. And in real life too, Kishore and Anup were quite scared of their brother Ashok, who was many years older. It was also during the shoot of this song that love blossomed between Kishore Kumar and Madhubala. And the next year, they were man and wife. On that note, we've come to the end of the episode. Hope you enjoyed the ride through the golden moments of India's cinematic history. Do mail us your feedback at weekend@timesnow.tv.
हम थे वो थी और समा रंगीन समझ गए ना जाते थे जापान पहुंच गए चीन समझ गए ना याने 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 प्यार हो गया ओ मन्नू तेरा हुआ अब